So, sorry about that, guys. I have no idea what just happened. If you were watching the last video, I was trying that on my laptop and it kind of freaked out at me. So I'm going back old school to my cell phone. So the quality is not going to be as good. You'll have to live with that. As I was talking about, the Glock 43, all Glocks are polymer frames, so this is basically plastic, and they're striker fired, which means they don't have a hammer like you'll see on 1911s, on Sig Sauer handguns or revolvers. What that means is usually it's a really, really crisp trigger pull that gets set when you rack the firearm, like so. You get a really, really light trigger pull, basically. There are plenty of guns out there that have nicer, smoother triggers, but for a stock handgun, the Glock is a benchmark. So, Glock 43 is a 9mm, 6-round capacity compact handgun. As opposed to the larger 19s or 26s, you do sacrifice a bit of capacity, but it also happens to be pretty darn narrow. So for size comparison, I brought out my, well, you're watching this on my phone, but I've just got my phone case here. As you can see, they're almost the same size. If you carry like a Galaxy or an iPhone 7 or whatever it is, they're gonna be darn near the same size. They actually make a holster that looks almost exactly like a phone case called the Sneaky Pete holster. I don't really recommend using them. They're kind of weird to me, but that's just me. So, enough about weird holsters. Glock 43, I chose this because while I can and have carried larger handguns, I wanted something I didn't have to think about dressing around. The larger handguns that I've carried, 1911s, Browning high powers, 4-inch barrel revolvers, I kind of had to make sure, okay, is my shirt baggy enough? Are my pants actually wide enough that I can put it and the holster inside my waistband without looking like I have like an extra kidney or something like that? But with the size of that little handgun, I can slip it into my Vetter Light Tuck appendix holster, and shout out to Vetter, a local company here in Mount Dora. They make a killer product, and these are made out of Kydex, which is basically plastic, so I don't have to worry about this deforming. I don't have to worry about it getting wet, and this way I've got a little clip right here, slip it onto my belt, throw a shirt over it, tuck my shirt in front of it, and I'm ready to go. And I carry it pretty much anywhere and everywhere I can. Just because I've carried larger handguns, like I said, and it almost became so laborious. I went, forget it. I'll leave it at home. And then what was the point of spending money and range time to get good enough with a defensive handgun if I'm not going to use it? And with some of the other Glocks out there, with the Glock 26 that I'd mentioned earlier, it's not that much bigger in most dimensions than this one. It does hold about twice the capacity, 12 rounds or so, but it happens to be about 1.5 times this thick. And when you're talking about such a little gun like this, it was hard for me to get my hand on. Some people might have no problem whatsoever, but since I've got my pinky off the edge here, if I can, a little narrower frame like this, I can really put a death grip on it, and I feel more comfortable shooting that way. It's a little easier for me to control. The 6-shot magazines go pretty quick, but again, with the size of them, I can carry a backup. I can carry 2 backups. The Glock 43 was, again, it was marketed as a deep concealment backup piece, and also for those who are smaller. I being 200 pounds and 6 feet tall, I'm not really the smaller clientele that they were talking about. I said women and small frame shooters, but it's so easy for me to conceal. They do also make another version of this, the Glock 42, which is chambered in 380, which is a slightly smaller cartridge. I actually have a 9mm here to show you what I'm talking about. So this little guy, if you remember me talking about rifle cartridges last week, this is a 9mm, 9mm Parabellum. So they're not very large. Most people consider this the absolute minimum that they would safely carry for a defensive handgun if they needed to use it. It's got a pretty good track record of being used by pretty much every military for the past 50 years, longer than that if you're talking about European countries, and quite a few police agencies, the FBI and things like that. So not to get too far into concealed carry, because I would love to do another episode on that if you all are interested in it, but these are Hornady critical defense. They're hollow points. Just like good hunting ammo, what these are designed to do is when they hit a target, they're supposed to open so that they transfer more of the energy into the target. So again, not getting too far into the details of it and the not so warm fuzzy part of defensive handgun use. And none of this is going to be legal advice. Please don't quote me on any of it. But so this is what I carry, relatively inexpensive, and the recoil's minimal enough that because I don't have the advantage to get to the range every week or every couple of days, I can spend a little bit less time or a little bit more time each range session getting more proficient with it. Whereas a bigger firearm like a 40 caliber, a 45, a 10mm, it's gonna require more time for me to be as proficient with that as I would be with the 9mm. So that's kind of what I have for these. If you have any questions, please let me know. Send me a message, call me, find me at work, find me in the street, whatever you need to do. You know, for reviews and suggestions, out of the concealed carry guns that I've had, this is probably my favorite. It's the best blend I've found of concealability and shootability. I also had a Smith & Wesson Shield, which is basically a direct competitor with this. I found that this is a much more pleasant gun to shoot. It's a little bit larger, but I feel like that's negated by the fact I'm more accurate with it. I find myself practicing with it more and I carry it more because of those things. So when choosing a handgun, those are the things you want to look at. How often are you going to shoot it? How well are you going to shoot it? And they tend to go hand in hand. So thank you guys for tuning in. I do apologize about that weird technical difficulty earlier in the day. But as always, happy Glocktober, and we'll see you next time.